Our story is Old Turtle and the Broken Truth. It's by Douglas Wood, and the watercolors are by Jon Muth. The dedication is to all who seek truths and who listen to the breezes of the language of breezes and turtles. That's you. Once in a beautiful faraway land, there was somehow not so very far, a land where every stone was a teacher and every breeze a language, where every lake was a mirror and every tree a ladder to the stars. Into this far and lovely land there fell a truth. It streaked down from the stars, trailing a tail as long as the sky. But as it fell, it broke. One of the pieces blazed off through the night sky, and the other fell to earth in the beautiful land. In the morning, Crow found the fallen piece. It seemed to be a sort of stone, shiny and pleasing to the eye. He picked it up. "This is a lovely truth," said Crow. "I will keep it." And he carried it away. But after he had held it for a while and examined it closely, Crow said, "This truth does not feel right. A part of it is missing. I will look for a whole one." He flew off and dropped it to the ground. Other creatures who like shiny things soon noticed the truth as well. Fox, coyote, raccoon, each picked it up and carried it a while. But they too found that it had rough edges and was difficult to carry, and its sparkle soon lost its appeal. "We do not need this broken truth," they said. "We will find a whole one." Butterfly and Bear also discovered the truth, drawn by its sweetness, but each found that it left a bitter taste after all. "There is something missing in this truth," they thought, and they left it alone. After a while, none of the creatures even noticed the broken truth anymore, and it lay on the ground, forgotten. Then a human being found it. He was walking slowly, listening to breezes, gazing at beauties above and below and all around him, when he found the broken truth. On it was writing, and the writing said, "You are loved." The man held it carefully, thinking it was the loveliest thing he had ever seen. He tucked the broken truth into a safe place and kept it. Sometimes he would take it out and admire it, and the truth sparkled just for him and whispered its message to him alone. And the man thought he had never felt so proud and so happy. The man took the wonderful truth to his people, those who lived with him, who spoke as he spoke, and dressed as he dressed, and whose faces looked like his. And together they cherished their newfound truth and believed in it. They hugged it to themselves, and it became their most important possession. After a while, the man and his people did not hear the language of breezes and stones anymore, but heard only their truth. They did not see the mirrored beauty in the lakes, or the ladders to the stars, but saw only their sparkling truth. And for them, it was enough. And they called it the truth. The truth made the people feel good and proud and strong, but soon they also began to feel fear and even anger toward those who were not like themselves and did not share their truth. The other beings and other people of the lovely land seemed less and less important, and the language of the breezes was hardly ever heard any more. Time passed, and other people said, "We must have this great truth for ourselves, for with it comes happiness and power." Many battles were fought, and the broken truth was won and lost and won and lost and over again. But such was its power and beauty that no one ever doubted it. And when they were without it, they felt great emptiness where their truth had been. The stories and trees suffered, the breezes and waters suffered, and the animals and the earth, and most of all, the people suffered. Finally, the animals went to Old Turtle, ancient and wise as the mountains and seas themselves. Crow and Fox went, Coyote went, Raccoon, Butterfly, Bear, and many others all went to see Old Turtle. "This truth the people quarrel over," they said. "We have all held it ourselves. It is broken and does not work. Please tell the people." "I am sorry," answered Old Turtle, "but the people will not listen. They are not yet ready." And the suffering continued. And there are the animals. Until one day, a little girl came to find Old Turtle. She had traveled very far, had crossed the mountains of imagining and the river of wondering why, had found her way through the forest of finding out. And when she had grown tired, she had ridden on the backs of animals or the wings of birds, and they had helped her find her way. Finally, they came to a great hill in the very center of the world. From there, the little girl thought she had never seen so far or seen so much beauty. There's the little girl on the top of the great hill. And when she saw Old Turtle, she could hardly speak. She simply looked with eyes full of wonder. "Why have you come so far to find me, little one?" asked Old Turtle. Her voice tumbled like faraway thunder, but was soft as the breeze through a caterpillar's whiskers. "I, I wanted to ask a question," answered the little girl. "When I live, the earth, where I live, the earth is sore and people are suffering. Battles are fought over and over again. People say it has always been this way and will never change. Can it change, Old Turtle? Can we make it change?" Old Turtle spoke. "The world you describe is not the world that has always been, little one." Then Old Turtle told of how the people had found the broken truth and the suffering it had caused. "It is because it is so close to a great whole truth that it has such beauty and that the people love it so," said Old Turtle. "It is the lost portion of that broken truth that the people need if the world is to be made whole again." But where is the missing piece? Asked the little girl. Can we put the truth back together again? There is Old Turtle. First, my child, said Old Turtle, remember that there are truths all around us and within us. They twinkle in the night sky and bloom upon the earth. They fall upon us every day, silent as the snow and gentle as the rain. The people clutching their one truth forget that it is part of all the small and lovely truths of life. They no longer see these truths, no longer hear them. But perhaps, little one, you can. I'll try, said the little girl. And she thought once more of her long journey. She looked upon all the beauty that surrounded her, from the far hills to the flowers beneath her feet. She saw the movement of clouds and the soaring of birds and the dancing of light upon the green and living earth. She heard the whispering of a breeze. And gradually a feeling came over her, as though all the world were made of truths, as if the world had been made just for her, and she had been made for it. And she felt a secret smile somewhere deep inside, and thought that perhaps she understood. She looked once again at Old Turtle, her eyes more filled with wonder than before. Old Turtle spoke again. Remember this also, little one, she said. The broken truth and life itself will be mended only when one person meets another, someone from a different place, or with a different face, or different ways, and sees and hears herself. Only then will the people know that every person, every being is important, and that the world was made for each of us. For a long time then the two friends were quiet, high on their hill in the very center of the world, and in her heart the little girl thought she could see other people in other beautiful lands, people with their own ways, their own truths, people different from her own, but still somehow the people. Finally, the little girl asked one more question. Old Turtle, how will the people learn these things? By seeking out those small and simple truths all around them, said Old Turtle. By listening once more to the language of breezes. By learning lessons from stones and animals and trees and stars, even turtles, she chuckled, and little girls. Now, little one, it is time for you to go, to return to your people and tell them what you have seen and learned, and to help them mend their broken truth. Take this with you, said Old Turtle as she placed something in the little girl's hand. I have saved it for a very long time, for someone just like you. The little girl looked at what Old Turtle had given her. It was a kind of stone, a mysterious, beautiful stone. It was lovely to touch, and it made her feel good to hold it. She squeezed it tightly, then tucked it away for her journey. Thank you, Old Turtle, she said, and hugged her friend's great leathery neck. And then she started home. Once more she traveled through the forest of finding out, crossed the river of wondering why, and the mountains of imagining. Crow led the way, and again when the little girl grew tired, All her animal friends helped. She sometimes touched the stone old turtle had given her to renew her strength, and it took a long time, yet almost no time at all. And she was home, but it had been a very long journey, and those who take great journeys of the heart are changed. The people did not recognize her, and when she spoke, they did not understand. She told them of her journey, but the people could not follow her words. She spoke of a world made of small and gentle truths, of all the peoples being one people, but they could not catch her meaning. She explained about the broken truth and the need to make it whole, but the people did not believe her and could not understand. Finally, Crow, seeing all that had happened, flew to the place high above the village where the great truth was kept, in a place where all could see it. He called, and called in his loudest voice. Suddenly the little girl knew what to do. She climbed to the high place herself. She took Old Turtle's stone from her pocket and carefully added the missing piece to the old broken one. She took it way up there. The fit was perfect. The people looked and looked. Some frowned, some smiled, some even laughed, and some cried. And they began to understand. Time passed, and upon the beautiful land the trees climbed like ladders to the stars. The waters shone like mirrors, and the people saw their beauty. A breeze stirred, and they heard its music. Tiny truths fell by day and night, gentle as the rain and snow, and the people found them and kept them in their hearts. And slowly, as the people met other people different from themselves, they began to see themselves. And far away on a hill in the very center of the world, Old Turtle smiled because the broken truth became the whole truth. And it said, "You are loved, and so are they." Old Turtle and the broken truth.
It's a favorite story of mine.
Beautiful. Could you repeat the author, please, Dawn?
It's Douglas Wood. It's Douglas Wood, and the watercolors are by Jon Muth. Douglas Wood and Jon Muth. It says so much in such a beautiful way. Thank you for listening.
I bought it and read it so I would know it ahead of time. Right.
Yeah. I have a follow-up. I have a quick follow-up. It's a poem that was in the Sun magazine. And it's by Ellen Bass, and it's called When You Return. When you return, fallen leaves will climb back into trees. Shards of the shattered vase will rise and reassemble on the table. Plastic raincoats will refold into their flat envelopes. The egg, bald yolk and its transparent halo, slide back in their thin calcium shell. Curses will pour back into mouths. Letters unwrite themselves. Words siphoned up into the pen. My gray hair will darken and become the feathers of a black swan. Bullets will snap back into their chambers. The powder tamped tight in brass casings. Borders will disappear from maps. Rust revert to oxygen and time. The fire returned to the log to the tree, the white root curled up in the unsplit seed. Bird song will fly into the lark's lungs. Answers become questions again. When you return, sweaters will unravel and wool grow on the sheep. Rock will go home to mountain, gold to vein. Wine crushed into the grape, oil pressed into the olive. Silk reeled in to the spider's belly. Night moths tucked close into cocoons. Ink drained from the indigo tattoo. Diamonds will be returned to coal. Coal to rotting ferns. Rain to clouds. Light to stars sucked back and back into one timeless point. The way it was before the world was born. That fresh, that whole, nothing broken, nothing torn apart.
I just started a subscription to the Sun magazine recently. Yeah. And I have 2 issues that I have to read now. So I have to go look for them, see where I put them. Okay, we are reading another story from The Honey Thief by Najaf Mazari and Robert Hillman that follows on the last story we read last week, which was called The Wolf is the Most Intelligent of Creatures. And this is the title story of the book, The Honey Thief, set in Hazara in Afghanistan. Ahmad Hussein was a Perverish Dahenda, a beekeeper, a maker of honey. This is a craft honored amongst the Hazara, since honey is the prince of foods, and the process by which it is made is one of the marvels of the world. It is the bees who make the honey, not beekeepers, but to know where to place your hives and when is the first lesson of making the bees work for you. Ahmad Hussein knew exactly where to place his hives, and a great deal more. People said, the bees work for Ahmad Hussein as if he were their king, and this was true. Ahmad Hussein was not an ordinary person. Bees obeyed him. Animals obeyed him. Sheep and goats obeyed him. He was honored by the Hazara, but even strangers who are not Hazara respected Ahmad Hussein. They saw his eyes, they knew that he was close to God in some way. And if they thought of doing him harm, they would change their minds.
Ahmad Hussein worked alone, but once in so many years, he took on an apprentice and trained him in the craft. He had trained 2 of his own sons, but one had died of poliomyelitis at the age of 20, and the other, who had shown even greater promise, had married into a family of tinsmiths and now made his living in a workshop far from the mountain pastures. It happened that Ahmad Hussein was ready for an apprentice in the spring of Ismail Basedi's death, and he chose Abbas from amongst the many boys who asked him to train them. He chose Abbas as a mark of respect for Ishmael, who had been his friend and was once his master, and also because he knew that the boy was grieving. Kindness had come Ahmad Hussein's way in the person of Ishmael, and because of that, he had some kindness to spare for this boy who had loved Ishmael.
Ahmad Hussein's bees lived their lives in special boxes of white and blue, known as Sanduk Asal. He had many places for the hives, some of them a great distance apart, and in each place 100 boxes stood amongst the grass and the wildflowers. I have said that it was one of Ahmad Hussein's gifts that he knew where to place his hives. Such a skill is not uncommon, but it was rare for a beekeeper to take as much time as Ahmad Hussein in choosing a site. He did not say, I will place the boxes in the field and leave it at that. As Abbas came to know when he walked the fields with Ahmad Hussein in the first days of his apprenticeship. Ahmad Hussein strode down each side of the field and across from one corner to another. Often he would stop and think, why have we stopped here, Abbas? He once asked the boy. And Abbas said, Sir, I cannot guess. It was Abbas's habit to address Ahmad Hussein as Sir whenever he asked a question. Ahmad Hussein did not say, relax, call me by my name, for he knew that the boy would find that difficult for a time. He also knew that Abbas was concentrating more on his grandfather than on beekeeping, but that would change too.
Ahmad Hussein looked about left and right, behind and ahead. He looked at the sky. He looked at the grass. Then he said, Abbas, what do you think of this field? Abbas said, it's a good field. Yes, but is it the right field, little brother? Yes, it is surely the right field. But is this the right place in the right field? Yes, it is surely the right place in the right field. Should we have a look at another field? No, this is the right one, sir. Why? Why? Why is it the right one? I don't know. Then we will look at other places. Sir, I can't say. Abbas, I have a question for you. The question is this. Can a bee catch a cold? Abbas smiled. Can a bee catch a cold? No, it is impossible, sir. It is not impossible. A bee can catch a cold. How do you know? I have seen a bee sneezing. No, said Abbas. And before he could stop himself, he said, God will punish you for telling lies.
Ahmad Hussein laughed. He was teasing Abbas. But when a boy was as full of sorrow as this one, perhaps teasing could help. I have seen a bee sneezing, said Ahmad Hussein. When I said, God bless you, the bee said to me, you say God bless you, Ahmad Hussein, and yet look where you have placed our house. You have placed it where the cold wind comes across the field. It was true. I had placed his house where the cold wind troubled him. So now I am more careful. Now I place the beehives away from the cold and away from the afternoon sun. Do you see now why we must take our time when we look for the right place in the right field?
Ahmad Hussein spent 5 days teaching Abbas all the things that had to be taken into account when placing the hives. 25 judgments had to be made, he said, before the hives were set down in a field. And he not only told Abbas the 25 judgments, he wrote them down on paper when the two of them ate their lunch on the 5th day. When Ahmad Hussein had finished his lunch, he said, do you know, Abbas, something happened in this field when I was your age that I would like to tell you about. Will you listen? Abbas said, of course, sir.
I came to this field all these years ago looking for the beehives of another man. At that time, I knew nothing of bees, but I knew I liked honey. So I came here and stole the honey, just enough to satisfy my desire. It was the 3rd time I'd stolen honey from the hives. Does that surprise you? Abbas was blushing. He said, surely you didn't do such a thing. Oh yes, said Ahmad Hussein. I had the devil in me sometimes when I was a boy. I stole the honey. But because it was my 3rd theft, someone was hiding in the grass and waiting for me, waiting for the honey thief. Before I knew it, a man had hold of my neck. A stick came down on my behind, once, twice, 20 times, and I screamed and struggled. They were hard blows, very hard. Then the beating stopped, and I stood crying and rubbing my behind. Dear God, how much it hurt. The man who had beaten me with the stick, he was watching and laughing. He said, what did you enjoy most, the honey or the beating? Or was one better than the other? Did you apologize for what you had done? Asked Abbas. He was shocked to hear that his teacher had stolen the honey. Such a thing would never have occurred to him.
Did I apologize? Said Ahmad Hussein. No, Abbas. I picked up a stone and threw it at that man. I hit him on the arm. Then he chased me all over the field, this very field in which we're sitting, down that way and over there by the trees. He caught me, of course. He was very fast, faster than me. And he beat you again, said Abbas. No, he didn't beat me again. He held me by my ear and left. Then he said, now you will work for me. And he took me home to my father and told him that I must become his apprentice. And why? Because when I had stolen the honey, I had not angered the bees. This is a rare thing, to steal honey without making the bees angry. The beekeeper saw that I had something special to bring to the craft. Ahmad Hussein drank some water from his bottle and passed it to Abbas. The beekeeper who beat me that day, his name was Ismail Hazari. You knew. Oh, thank you.
Oh, okay. Abbas's eyes opened wide. My grandfather! Yes, that famous man, your grandfather. Ahmad could see that Abbas was distressed. Perhaps it was hearing that the very man he was mourning had once been capable of beating boys with a stick. Or perhaps he was upset to hear that Ahmad Hussein had thrown a stone at his grandfather, even though it was so long ago. He left the boy alone with his thoughts for a few minutes. Then he said, we'll put the hives here, in this place. Together, Ahmad Hussein and Abbas walked back to the far side of the field where the horse and cart had been left, and the hives.
That day and the next, and for weeks and months, Ahmad Hussein taught Abbas how to find the right places for the beehives. He taught Abbas slowly. All of Ahmad Hussein's lessons were slow lessons. He taught Abbas to respect the bees. He said that the bees knew that they would be robbed of their honey, but they made it anyway. If a bee was a creature with a mean spirit, it would make no honey and starve itself to death, to spite the beekeeper. Instead, the bee made enough honey for himself and his tribe, and enough for Ahmad Hussein too.
In those weeks and months of slow teaching, Ahmad Hussein taught Abbas to respect the bees. The boxes of blue and white were the factories of the bees, Ahmad Hussein said. Inside the boxes, each bee did his work according to a plan devised by God. He said God made his plan for the bees a very long time ago, when he first saw the need in the world for bees. Each bee had a brain. Into this brain, God put the plan for making honey. The home of the bees at that time was not in white and blue boxes, but in hollow trees. To hold the honey, the bees made kani zambure within the hollow trees. They made it from wax. Where the bees found the wax is a mystery. The kani zamburi is made up of many small shells, and on each shelf the honey is stored. It was the intention of the bees to eat the honey all through the year. But one morning many years ago, a man of great intelligence, a Hazara, discovered the factory of the bees in the hollow tree, and he tasted the honey. Because of his great intelligence, the first beekeeper of the world built hundreds of boxes of blue and white where the bees could live in greater comfort than in a hollow tree, and the bees made honey for him and for his family.
Ahmad Hussein showed Abbas the kahani zambur, the honeycombs inside the boxes. They were like trays that could be lifted out. They dripped with the honey of the bees. But when the trays were taken from the boxes, the bees became angry, So it was necessary for Ahmad Hussein to wear a veil and gloves and to chase the bees from the boxes with a strange device that made smoke. Bees don't like smoke. It gets in their eyes just as it gets in the eyes of people, and they fly away for a time.
The anger of the bees raised a question in Abbas's mind. But my grandfather saw that you had a gift for stealing honey. You didn't make the bees angry. That was luck. Bees are always angry when we take their honey, but maybe it was a bit more than luck. Something was troubling Abbas, as Ahmad Hussein could plainly see. What is it? He said. He was very patient. At first, Abbas was reluctant to say more, but finally he spoke up. Sir, are we not stealing the honey of the bees? Are we not stealing their food?
Certainly we are stealing their food, said Ahmad Hussein. It would be a lie to say we are not. Then he added, I make the bees work for me. They are my slaves. Ahmad Hussein looked at Abbas sideways with a smile. He knew that the boy would be shocked to hear him say that the bees were his slaves. In the past, many Hazaras had been made slaves by powerful people in Afghanistan. And the sheep, too, are our slaves, said Ahmad Hussein, and the goats and the horse here that pulls our cart. But there is a difference, isn't there, Abbas? Surely, said Abbas. And he said, is there? When a man is a slave, his heart breaks, said Ahmad Hussein. That is the difference. The bees are angry, but their hearts are not broken.
The trays from the hives were taken to a wonderful machine that Ahmad Hussein carried with him on his cart. Abbas was fascinated by all the machines. He saw science in their workings, science and its laws. But the machine had to be set up carefully. And Ahmad Hussein made sure that Abbas understood each step. So painstaking was Ahmad Hussein that Abbas's excitement got the better of him, and he began to hop from one foot to another. Abbas, what is troubling you? Said Ahmad Hussein, though he knew well. Do you want to relieve your bladder? I want to see the machine making honey. If you want to see the machine making honey, you must be patient. Can't you see that the machine has to be put together with great care? Yes, I can see. Do you think the machine puts itself together? No, it doesn't put itself together. Who puts the machine together? Ahmad Hussein, you know the answer, said Abbas. It was the first time he had addressed his teacher without saying, sir. It's you who puts the machine together. Then how can I put the machine together if I am watching you wriggling with your trousers?
The machine came in 6 parts. The biggest part was a pair of large steel wheels enclosed by a metal covering. Between the 2 rims of the wheels, inside the covering, slots had been made. The wheel stood on a welded frame, and on this frame, the wheel was made to spin very fast when a handle was turned. The handle was attached to a smaller wheel with teeth on it, called a cog wheel. And this smaller wheel combined with a wheel still smaller, called a pulley wheel. The cog wheel and the pulley wheel were joined by a belt of rubber. At the bottom of the wheel, a drum had been fixed, and from the drum ran a length of rubber hose.
Ahmad Hussein slid the trays into the slots of the machine. It was possible to put 10 trays inside at one time. When the machine was full of trays, Ahmad Hussein sealed it, shut, and turned the handle. At first he turned the handle slowly, then he turned it faster. The speed of the turning made the honey fly out of the trays and gather in a reservoir at the bottom. The honey then dripped through the rubber hose into big tin buckets. After a time, instead of dripping out of the rubber hose, the honey began to flow into the tin bucket. For Abbas, this was the first truly happy day he had known since the death of his grandfather. His delight was written all over his face. Ahmad Hussein said, do you see what has happened, Abbas? The bees go to the flowers, and from the flowers comes the nectar, the asal. Inside the factory boxes of the bees, the nectar becomes honey, and now the honey flows into the bucket. Is this not a great wonder?
On the journey back to the village that evening in the cart, Abbas carried in his lap a large metal tin of the honey made that day. In the tray of the cart behind, a further 20 tins of honey were packed into 4 wooden boxes. Ahmad Hussein said, tomorrow I go north to the forest hives. The honey of the forest hives tastes different. Will you come? Will your father agree? I think he will agree, said Abbas. And you, will you agree? I will certainly agree. Is this a life you might choose, Abbas? The life of a Parwish Dahande? Gladly, Ahmad Hussein. A slave driver, will your conscience permit it, Abbas? It will.
The country they passed over was all Hazara. They didn't have to fear being robbed, something that could happen in other parts of Afghanistan. As the horse picked out the path, Abbas sat and thought. Ahmad Hussein didn't make a sound for half an hour other than to murmur snatches of songs. But when he thought it was time to interrupt the boy's thoughts, he nudged him with his shoulder. Are your thoughts a pleasure to you? Asked Ahmad Hussein. Share them with me. Abbas remained silent for a minute more. Then he said, do you believe that bears can talk? Can bears talk? A strange question. No, a bear cannot talk except to another bear. Have you ever seen a snow leopard? Said Abbas. Yes, said Ahmad Hussein. In the high mountains, I saw a snow leopard. It carried a dead weasel in its jaws. But a snow leopard can't sing, can it? It can't sing songs as we can. No, a snow leopard cannot sing. Someone told me that snow leopards could sing, said Abbas, and that bears could talk. I didn't believe him, but then I began to doubt my own doubts. Ahmad Hussein called to the horse. Hi, hi, stay awake. To Abbas he said, I was told the same stories. Yes, said Abbas. Yes, said Ahmad Hussein, by the same storyteller. Isn't that a lovely story?
It's a lovely story.
So hopefully that will go out on the recording and then Dorian can share it and he can listen to it himself. I think he really would have been near tears by the end of this story because I was feeling the same, and I've read it before, you know.
Yeah.
To have relationships like that was so real and so close to the heart and so understanding of nature. We don't have people like that around very much. We have people who are programmed, you know, and programming doesn't help you when you're in distress.